Broadcasting live from a hollowed out tree stump in the middle of no man's land. You reach Married with Comedy with Jeff Onyx and Joe Chandler. Strap in, boys and girls, and keep your arms and legs in the vehicle at all times, cause it's gonna get bumpy.
What? So Joe's not going to be here tonight. Joining me on the phone is going to be James R. Freeman later on. And so it's going to be fun. Welcome to the show, Married with Comedy. I'm Jeff Onyx. We're going to have an awesome, phenomenal, awesome show. There's a weird stench in here because we are directly below a bathroom. And apparently it flooded in the last couple of days. So I can smell it. I'm just saying. I can smell it. Anyway, so before we do anything else, you need to know that you can send us fan mail, care of Comedy Vets, P.O. Box 369, Lathrop, Missouri, 64465. Or if you are an angry feminist, you can send us hate mail, care of Comedy Vets, P.O. Box 369, Lathrop, Missouri, 64465. I'm curious about something. I'm gonna... Nope. I don't want that, and I don't want that, and I don't want that. Boom. I was curious. I was just gonna see if it would try to start over again, and I was right. Yeah, you know what? If you want to, I can put you on the phone, Mrs. Onyx. You know what I'm saying, G? I could put you on the phone. Mrs. Onyx was going to be my co-host tonight, but I had to get to the office early, and I had a feeling I needed to get here early, and because the flooding, I'm glad I did get here early because I was able to move some of the equipment out of the way so that it didn't get wet, just in case that continues to get, the flooding from the toilet. Don't put stuff in the toilet that doesn't belong in the toilet. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's what you should do. Not put stuff in the toilet. Today's trivia question. Trivia snap. So, the trivia question today is... Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. What American pioneer... No. The American pioneer John Chapman was famous for planting what kind of tree? American pioneer John Chapman was famous for planting what kind of tree? Tickety-tack, clickety-clack. Let me know in the comments who you think. We'll let you know at the end of the show who that is, or not who that is. What happened? What he did. All right. So this week in comedy history is going to be this person right there. That person. Yeah. So this week in comedy history is Tig Notaro, born Matilda O'Callahan Notaro on March 24th, 1971. She's an American stand-up comedian, writer, radio contributor, and actress. She's known for her deadpan comedy. Her acclaimed album, a live album, was nominated in 2014 for the Grammy Award for Best Comedy Album at 56th Annual Grammy Awards. The special Tig Notaro, Boyish Girl Interrupted, was nominated in 2016 at the 68th Primetime Emmy Awards for Outstanding Writing for a Variety Special. In 2017, the album Boyish Girl Interrupted was nominated for the Grammy Award for Best Comedy Album at the 59th Annual Grammy Awards. So, this person, Tig Notaro. And you might not know that Notaro was digitally inserted in post-production of the movie Army of the Dead when director Zack Snyder replaced Chris D'Elia after Chris was accused of sexual misconduct. So Tig was inserted into the movie, which when we watched the movie, we didn't know that. And all of the scenes were like perfectly suited for this whole thing. The only thing we thought was weird was one of the scenes that go, "Who's this guy?" And Tig was like, "What? I'm the pilot, right? I'm the pilot. That's what I'm supposed to do. Whatever." Anyway, well, I can't remember what the line was, but she just like kept on with it. It was pretty interesting. So, yeah, this week in comedy history is Tig Notaro. Tig? Is it Tig or Teague? I can't remember. Tig or Teague? I can't remember which. All right, well, we're gonna do the Ghetto Chef, and we're just gonna leave that thing up because Ghetto Chef is the oh my gosh, it's the whole thing. I didn't want the whole thing, bro. I just wanted that one recipe. Muffin tin biscuit puffs right here. Muffin tin biscuit puffs. So close that one. Muffin tin biscuit puffs. Okay, so it's Bisquick, okay, and then you take the Bisquick and you squeeze it into muffin tins. Ugh, what is up with all these poppity ups? Nobody cares about your stupid poppity ups. I'm never going to this website again. Oh, hate this website. So Bisquick, ground beef. So let's look at the actual recipe. You know, why do we have to click like 15 different links just to get to a stupid recipe? So a lot of times in your commodities box, you'll have Bisquick. Oh, look, the recipe's not found. Wow. Yeah. So click here for the recipe. You know what I'm saying? You go ahead and have this recipe right here. Get the recipe right here. Boom. Nope. Nope. Okay, I don't need your stupid recipe to tell you what it is. All right, so you take Bisquick and you squish it into the little muffin tins, okay? The small muffin tins. All right, and then you load it with whatever you want to put in there. Ground beef and cheese is like make little cheeseburger things. Um, so you can make little beef pies doing that. So you just shove the Bisquick in there, put some meat in it, put some cheese on top of it, throw it in the oven, bake it the same way you would bake biscuits. Keep an eye on it because it's going to be a little thin. You know, it's not going to like have the consistency of a biscuit. Well, I mean, it will, but I'm saying when you cook a biscuit is dense in the middle because it's got a lot of stuff. Well, this is going to have meat in the middle. So you just got to keep an eye on the browning around the edge, and you'll be able to tell when it's done. So easy to do. Muffin tin Bisquick puffs. Muffin tin Bisquick puffs. So you take Bisquick, mix it like you normally would, put it in muffin tins, add you some ground beef and some cheese, throw it in the oven, cookity cook. Okay. It could also be done similar to this. You can do chicken with some cheese on it. Throw in some chicken, a little bit of garlic, garlic powder or minced garlic with some cheese on top of it. You could use whatever kind of cheese you want. I'm sure the chicken ones would taste just as good as these beef ones look like. So there you go. That is the Ghetto Chef. Ghetto Chef. Yeah. So moving along. Ghetto Chef. You know what I'm saying? My hair is pretty today. I fell off a ladder yesterday and hurt myself a little bit, but I was shy and I didn't want to tell anybody that I was hurt. So I just sat there whining about it. So you notice the camera's a little tilted? Or is that me? No, that's the camera tilted. Like I'm trying to overcompensate for the tilt, but no, camera's tilted. What can you do? Probably got hit by water. So, yeah, that's what's going on. So we're going to be joined with Jay here in a little bit. I'm going to give him a holla in a few minutes, in a couple minutes, but let's go back to the trivia question. Let you guys... Oh, boom. I messed up. Oh, I messed up this week. Look, watch this. Watch. It was supposed to be Ghetto Chef, but it was Ghetto Chef with the other thing under it. Ghetto Chef. Boom. Trivia. Okay. Remember, the question for the trivia question is, American pioneer John Chapman was famous for planting what kind of tree? What kind of tree did John Chapman plant? Yeah. So, trivia. Yeah. If you want to send us fan mail, send us fan mail. Care of Comedy Vets, P.O. Box 369, Lathrop, Missouri 64465. If you're an angry feminist, you can send us hate mail, hate M-A-L-E. Care of Comedy Vets, P.O. Box 369, Lathrop, Missouri 64465. So what we've been doing is, during the live show, there's a little bit of a description going on, but after the live show is over, what we do is we take the timestamps for the different segments of the episode, and we add that to the description, so that way if you're watching this and you're not watching it live at the moment, but you want to watch it later on, you can jump to a specific timestamp to a specific segment, and then that way, if for some reason you don't like a segment, like you don't like This Week in Comedy History, and you just want to skip to Ghetto Chef, you can do that. Whatever. So, or if you like the times when Jay's on the show, you can jump straight to that. If there's the time you like when Joe's on the show, jump straight to that. So, whichever one of those you want to do. So, yeah. I think what I'm going to do is, it's like 3 minutes early, but I'm gonna call Jay anyway, because I feel like calling him 3 minutes early. He's gonna be like, "Why are you calling me early?" And I'm gonna be like, "'Cause I can. Call you 3 minutes early if I feel like it. Call you 2 minutes early if I feel like it. Technically, it's 4 minutes. No, now it's 3 minutes early. 3 minutes early." He's not gonna answer. Watch. Nope. He's not gonna answer.
It's Jay. You've reached my voicemail.
He says he'd call me right back. Whatever, bro. All right. So today we're going to be talking about this guy. Let me put him up on the screen if I can. Boom. This guy, Ludwig. We're going to be talking about Ludwig. Ludwig Eduard Boltzmann. Edward Ludwig Boltzmann. Okay? So this dude right here. Edward Ludwig Boltzmann. Edward Ludwig Boltzmann was born February 20th, 1844, and he died September 5th, 1906. He was an Austrian physicist and philosopher. Okay? His greatest achievements were the development of statistical mechanics and the statistical explanation of the second law of thermodynamics. Boom. In 1877, he provided the current definition of entropy. Entropy. Yep. He interpreted as a measure of statistical disorder of a system. Yep. And Max Planck named the constant, KB, the Boltzmann constant, because Boltzmann is the one that came up with it. So, yeah. So we're going to be talking about this dude, and yeah, we're gonna be talking about that dude right here. This guy. He's a real interesting dude. Okay, so let's switch over to. You know what? That's pretty much all of it right there. All right, so this Wikipedia doesn't have everything that's going on. Okay, so this dude, he started college when he was 19. Okay, he was a genius. He started college when he was 19. Within 3 years, he had his PhD. He achieved his doctorate in mathematics. He studied mathematics and physics, and at the time, mathematics and physics was basically just about mechanics. It's about how mechanical things worked, and it didn't go all in any hardly anything else. Just how mechanical things worked. Okay. So let's see. He was appointed a professor of mathematics at the University of Graz in the province of Styria. In 1869, he spent several months in Heidelberg working with Robert Bunsen and Leo Kuchenberg. I can't even pronounce that name. And in 1871, with Gustav Kirchhoff and Hermann von Helmholtz in Germany. In 1873, Boltzmann joined the University of Vienna as a professor of mathematics, and there he stayed until 1876. So in 1872, way before women were allowed to be in universities, he met his wife, Henrietta von Eigenter. She was an inspiring teacher of mathematics and physics in Graz. She refused permission to audit lectures unofficially. So he married her. They got married. They got married on July 17, 1876. So women weren't allowed to be, mathematicians, and they weren't allowed to go to college and stuff like that. But this chick was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to do it. You can't stop me. So, yep. You know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to wait for Jay to jump on in here. So the reason he was a science denier, he's the science denier of the week. The reason he's the science denier of the week is because when he first came about, people didn't have any idea about the statistical mathematic equations that had to do with heat and motion and time and things of that nature, or entropy or any of that stuff. So, yeah, there you go. What's up, Jay?
What's up, man?
So I've already started talking about Ludwig Boltzmann. So I already started talking about Ludwig Boltzmann. Ludwig Boltzmann. Did you read anything about this dude?
I did not.
Okay, so he was a he was a mathematician and a philosopher and a physicist, and he worked with statistical mechanics and mathematics, and he wrote a bunch of papers on the second law of thermodynamics and entropy. So at the time, he was a science denier because at the time, a thermometer, which this is how his entire career doing what he's doing started. He was looking at the thermometer, and everybody at the time, they said the thermometer, what it's doing is it's reading it's telling the temperature based on the amount of volume of the liquid inside of it, and the volume of the liquid increases, and that's why you can read the temperature, because the volume of increases in there. And he said, no, it's because the atoms that are in it, and people were like, what are atoms? And he's like, well, they're the really, really, really small molecule stuff. And the atoms in there, the more they move, the more they knock against each other, which makes the liquid looks like it's rising, but it's not. It's just being more active, so it looks like it's filling up more space in the container. And they were like, dude, you're crazy. You're an idiot. And he's like, no, dude, I can prove it. And he wrote out mathematical equations to prove what he was talking about. Any comments on that?
No. Mathematics is not one of my big subjects.
Well, what he did was he had a closed container, and he said that the molecules within the closed container, inside this closed container, when you open the container to a second chamber, what's going to happen is all of these things are going to go from this side, and they're going to do whatever they can to fill the other side. And another thing that he postulated at the time was that time cannot be reversed. You can't reverse time, and you can't reverse the effects or what's going on with atoms. Like you have statistical probability that a specific thing is going to happen, and you can write out an equation to know when things are going to happen. But there is a statistical probability that says that if let's say, for instance, you knock a coffee cup off of the table onto the ground, the statistical probability of that cup falling back up onto the table and reconstituting itself is so astronomical, there's no way you can calculate that. Well, he went through the process of trying to calculate it and said that you can't because of entropy. There's no way that it'll ever do that. You know what I mean? The statistical probability is so great that it wouldn't do it within your lifetime. It wouldn't do it. The universe would end before that would happen.
Well, that last bit of comment I'm not sure about, but I would say that statistically speaking, yes. That's once you start getting past 1 in 7 billion.
Well, and
that means it's not going to happen to you in your lifetime. Yes.
Well, and part of his equation, he looked at a billiard table, right? And he said, okay, so you strike the cue ball, and it hits the rest of the balls, setting them in motion, and they stop where they stop. You can statistically accurately predict that happening again if you hit the ball in the exact same spot, in the exact same velocity and everything, in the exact same conditions. You can make those balls that it hits land in the same spot.
Yeah, but see, that's what we learned through the how was that experiment with the slits, the particle something or other, where they sent the particles through the slits in the thing.
Yeah.
And instead of them just going through the slits like that, they had like all these different ways that they, almost like a shotgun blast behind it.
Yeah, it would move around because there was it was chaos. And
well, there were all kinds of factors that you could not determine involved in it, and one of which is, like I said last week, that thing with Einstein saying, as soon as a human puts their mind to work on an experiment, it automatically changes the experiment.
Right.
Just because a human is watching it.
So this guy was saying that if you're observing temperature and pressure, that those microscopic parameters fluctuate around an average. So that way, you can accurately predict certain things happening from the beginning. But if you were trying to go the opposite way, let's say you wanted to try to predict where all those balls going back to their original place and hitting the cue ball back to its original place, you would have to calculate all the balls and have them all calculated at a certain velocity and all them being struck at the exact same moment with with all those velocities calculated. And he said, statistically, it's impossible to do that. But even further than that, when you get into the atomic level, atoms are so small that you cannot predict how atoms are going to interact with each other, or with the environment they're in. You can predict how they're going to react to an extent, but you won't be able to predict it, further. So you can predict from the beginning till the end, but you can't predict from the end back to the beginning because there are too many variables from going the opposite direction. You know what I'm saying? Going backwards.
Well, what if prediction is simply a matter of intention? In other words, just because you predicted it, you are now going to affect that experiment in that direction.
Well, yeah, that's possible, I guess. Yeah, people could do that.
You see where I'm going with that? I feel like one of the things that we've noticed is when we do experiments, all kinds of things can happen. Like, there's never been an experiment to prove the motion of the Earth.
Right.
And yet it's accepted as a fact, but it's not a provable fact. Mathematics cannot calculate what they're telling us is true.
Yeah.
And the same thing for the curvature of the Earth. You probably have too. I've known some people that were snipers and one of them was a ranger, no less. And he told me that the Coriolis effect is BS. They do not take that into account when they're firing their weapon.
Well, that is a trip, dude. We're going to get into, I think next week, the conjecture fact is going to be snipers.
It's going to be what?
Snipers. Sniping.
Oh, sniping.
Sniping.
Sniper, no sniping.
Because I watched a video today. I'm not going to go into it. We'll go into it next week. You're gonna love it. Okay, so most chemists at the time, since the discovery of John Dalton made some discoveries in 1808, and Boltzmann believed in atoms and molecules, but most of the physics establishment didn't even believe in molecules and atoms. They didn't believe that they were something that actually was going on. So everything that he was saying about molecules and atoms, people were like, you're insane. He's like, no, they're there. And he wrote out like all these equations and stuff. And then he got into learning about entropy. And the guy that came up with the word entropy, he was trying to make the word energy, but opposite, or something that was different. So he came up with the word entropy.
Gotcha.
So Boltzmann took the entropy equations, and he made an equation based on that, and he made a thing. He came up with a thing called the Boltzmann constant. So yeah,
okay.
So which basically it described the thermodynamic state of a system that can be realized by assigning different positions and momenta to the various molecules within that system. So if you assign a position and momentum, where it starts and what momentum it has where it's going to, then once you've assigned those, then you can predict where those particles are going to go and what they're going to do.
Yeah, with very little accuracy, I imagine.
I don't know. The Boltzmann equation was developed to describe the dynamics of an ideal gas.
Right, Higgs boson.
Huh?
I'm keeping up. Keep going.
Yeah. So, the equation describes the temporal and spatial variations of the probability distribution for the position and momentum of a density distribution of a cloud of points in a single particular phase space. You catch any of that?
No. Can you read it again? Over my head. I took statistics in college, but it took me the whole semester to figure it out.
In his principle, it completely describes the dynamics of an ensemble of gas particles given appropriate boundary conditions. The first order differential equation has a deceptively simple appearance. Yep. Also, the force acting upon the particle depends directly on the velocity distribution function of F within the equation. Boltzmann's equation is notoriously difficult to integrate. David Halbert spent years trying to solve it without any real success. So this Boltzmann guy created this equation, and other people for decades couldn't figure it out. And he was like, way ahead of his time, dude. And then Boltzmann proved the second law of thermodynamics using his equation. And a thing called the H theorem.
H or age?
H, like the H bomb. He also made a formulation called the molecular chaos, an assumption which breaks time reversal symmetry, as it is necessary for anything which could imply the second law. So the second law of thermodynamics says that everything deteriorates over time.
Right.
So every system, it deteriorates over time. So
right, that makes sense.
So and his equation basically proves that was actually true. Crazy, huh?
Well, it's pretty crazy.
It's the law of disorder, they call it, the law of disorder, that any system will infinitely break down eventually.
Right, and then you have stuff like, uranium that takes a long time to break down because of the percentages are so low. If you're breaking down something at 0.4% per decade or whatever it is, statistically speaking, that's gonna take forever.
Yeah.
So,
well, what's really sad about this dude is near the end of his life, so he went insane, and he went into an insane asylum. And while he was
right, nobody would listen to him. I know that feeling.
Yeah. So he went into this insane asylum, and nobody was listening to him. And he went from being like a really outgoing, friendly person to being like really depressed and super, super sad. Right?
Because everybody made him believe he was crazy.
Right.
That'll wear on you, man.
So his wife was like, "You know what you need? You need to get out of this insane asylum and go on a vacation."
To the Galapagos Islands? Oh, sorry.
So
Darwin, my bad.
So he's like, "Yeah, let's go on a vacation." So she checked him out of the insane asylum and took him to this resort for intellectuals and rich people, right?
Oh, interesting.
Okay. So they check into the hotel, which has like his room has like a piano in it and stuff, and it's like really, really like it's basically like an apartment, right?
Okay. Uh-huh.
And his daughter and his wife go to take a bath. They're bathing. They're taking a bath. And while they're in the bath, he takes a rope, and he, takes his own life.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah. While on vacation.
I don't know, man.
So
see, that's weird to me.
What?
Why would a genius do that?
Well, he wrote in his thing. He said, I'm gonna find the quote because it is a strange quote. I can't find the quote.
Government did it. Oh, not that quote.
No, he wrote in a thing. He said, I would have never. I'm paraphrasing. I would have never conceived of such an end as this. You know what I mean?
Say that again.
I would never conceive of such an end as this.
Ah.
Something of that nature.
So he pulled the Jeffrey Epstein. He didn't knock himself. I'm confused. What happened?
He was saying that when he went to go kill himself, he was basically, he wrote like that was his suicide note to say that he would have never in the past thought of what he was doing. He would have never came up with that. He spent a great deal of effort in his final years defending his theory. He didn't get along with a lot of his colleagues, and his colleagues saw energy and not matter as the chief component of the universe, but Boltzmann's position carried the day among other physicists supporting atomic theories in the debate, but nobody believed what he was saying, or hardly anybody believed what he was saying until 3 years after his death.
Huh.
Isn't that crazy?
Interesting. I will say this, though, there's still a line of thought that runs along that energy stuff, man. And with Tesla being on board with the energy and the ether being what makes up most of space.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a little torn right now.
Well, they were some doctors afterwards, later on when psychotherapy and psychology and everything was invented, they went through his papers and his writings and his diary and things, and they diagnosed him with bipolar disorder. So today it would have been considered bipolar disorder.
Right. So was he born a Gemini or? Highly intelligent, crazy.
Well, he was born February 20th, 1844. And he died.
Oh, hey, yeah.
He died September 5th, 1906. Guess who found him?
Who's that?
His daughter.
Yeah.
His daughter found him.
See, that's what I mean. How could a highly intelligent person like that not see the ripple effect of what he's doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It just seems like you got this person supposedly really intelligent and like smarter than everyone else, and then he gets upset or whatever at his life, and then he's just like, oh, well, let's not worry about the intelligence that I have or the family that I have. I'm just going to check out.
Yeah.
It just seems odd to me. Very odd.
Yeah. Well, some people just can't handle it, man. I don't get it. I don't get it either. I don't get it either. But on his tombstone, his tombstone bears the inscription of the Boltzmann entropy formula.
That's weird.
Trippy, huh? So
it's a little weird, yeah.
So
weird. I wonder.
Oh my gosh! You know what I didn't do the whole time?
What's that?
I didn't have the science denier of the week on the bottom of the thing there. So people didn't know I was talking about the science denier of the week. Oops. Whatever. All right, so that was the science denier of the week. Okay, so we're gonna do
a good one.
Conjecture of fact. Today's conjecture of fact is the 432 hertz versus the 440 hertz conspiracy theory.
My man.
Have you heard of this?
Finally. What do you mean? I'm the one who told you about this, Brett.
Did you?
Yes, sir.
I don't know, man.
Bob Marley. I think that's why they took Bob out.
Well, because I studied this.
He refused to convert.
A while ago, and then I ran across it again, and I'm like, so whatever. Well,
I'm happy, man. Look, look, you probably came across it on your own. I'm just saying, if you had been listening to me, you would have known that I know about this one.
Well, I'm gonna play the part of the guy who thinks it's bullshit.
All right.
And that everybody that believes this shit is stupid.
Okay, you're just gonna play that part.
Yeah, I'm gonna play that part. I'll play that part. So if you Google 432 hertz, you'll find a lot of stuff. There are a lot of articles, YouTube videos. There's a lot of information about 432. Not only is there a whole bunch of information about 432, but like people went so far as to go, well, there's 432 dimples on a golf ball, and there's 432 and if you do the math on 432, 4 plus 3 is 7 plus 2 is 9. Oh, it's one of the universal numbers. 9, 3, 6, and 9.
Yeah, or there are 9 levels on the solfeggio scale, which is where you will find 432, not 440. So your 9 perfect tones.
Yeah.
432 is on there. 440 is not.
Okay. You'll also see on the internet that there's this Nazi minister of propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, came up with this 432 hertz thing. Is what they're saying, because it's a wholly universal mind-opening thing, and it consists of prime numbers, 4 prime numbers, 103, 107, 109, and 113, which added up equals
432.
432.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Well, I'll say this: I don't know why he's getting attributed with the tone, because the tone is part of a scale that was discovered. I'm trying to remember when solfeggio came up with the scale, but it was supposedly perfect tones with no distortion or vibration, and that 440 is actually a slightly distorted tone, but you cannot discern that with your conscious mind.
Well, when did it happen? Do you know?
I don't. And I remember that they supposedly voted on it like in World War II, maybe?
Yeah, well, we'll go through the history of that stuff. We'll go to the history of that stuff here in a little bit. Okay? But we're gonna check this out and why it's my opinion is it's bullshit. You ready for this? Okay, so since the beginning of time, people have made music in one way or another. They hear it in nature, they duplicate it, they try to make music either with their mouth, their face, their whatever instruments that they come across. They notice the wind blowing through through a piece of wood, and they're like, oh, I can make sound come out of this or whatever. So people were trying to make music all the time, right? And then
Sure.
and then over time, people got together and they were like, I know how to make music with this thing. Okay, I know how to make music with this thing. Okay, let's go together and make music together. Okay, let's make music together. But back in the day, in the Middle Ages, all the different instruments were all tuned completely differently. Okay. And the whole thought of this whole 432 is that 432 hertz is 432 vibrations per second, right?
Right. Per second, yes.
So in the Middle Ages, the hour was divided into 2, 3, 4, or 12 equal parts, but it was never in the up till the Middle Ages, like after the Middle Ages or whatever. During that time, it was never divided into 60. So the minutes that they were using or the seconds that they were using, there's no way that they could have had 432 hertz because they didn't understand the concept of a second back then. You know what I'm saying? The practice of dividing a day into hours and then those hours into smaller segments started in the 16th century.
Okay.
But all the different clocks all ticked slightly different at different rates. So there was no standard measurement of what an actual day was. So you could have a clock at your house and you could say it's 3 o'clock. And I'd be like, okay, it's 3 o'clock. But in your town, there might be hundreds of clocks. And in that town, all of the clocks would be different.
No, similar issue. I get you.
So it didn't, till the 18th century, clocks didn't work right until around the 18th century. And then when the 18th century came about, they started refining how clocks worked. You know what I mean?
I get that.
And people define units of time as a fraction of the mean solar day, which is an average of time over 1 year. The 1 year that the Earth needs to rotate around its axis relative to the sun. So the first clocks.
Right, but then you get into that thing where you're implying a constancy or a consistency in that number, and there's no way that's the case.
Right. So the first clocks that were sort of accurate or the most accurate at the time didn't come out until the 16th or the 18th century.
Okay.
So in the 1940s, the speed of the rotation of the Earth was not a constant due to the variation of tidal effects. So they redefined the duration of 9,192,631,770 periods of the radiation corresponding to the transition between the two hyperfine levels of the ground state of the cesium-133 atom. So the 432 hertz tuning, divining the tuning of nature itself, like people saying that this is very spiritual because it's the 432 hertz per second.
Right, but that's a different argument.
Well,
right?
I guess.
That's a different argument than what we're having.
Well, I don't know. But why do people use 440? Or why do people use 440 instead of 432?
They voted on that.
They voted on that. So
yes. So someone decided that 440 was better than 432, and they while we were at war, if I remember correctly, the entire world decided, hey, You know that solfeggio scale with the perfect tones? That guy was an idiot.
Well,
let's go ahead and raise that vibration just a little bit, and we'll make that the mandatory music.
Well, let's go through time, the time period, to find out when people started using 440. You ready? So
when officially, because also what I was going to tell you, I'm glad you brought that up. Well, also I was going to tell you, you've tuned guitars, right?
Yeah.
So there's a spot where you have it tuned, and then there's a spot where it's just out of tune.
Right.
And I think that's the argument we're really having right now.
Well, and there's a difference between how you
440 an intentional distortion of music.
Well, and then you have like I tune my guitar by ear.
Right.
And because I tune my guitar by ear, it always sounds the same, but it doesn't sound the same as somebody else's. But let's get into the history. Here we go.
Perfect.
In at the time, like Bach, Beethoven, dudes like that. In Bach's era, there's no standard way to tune an instrument. The same piece of music could sound higher or lower depending on where and when it was performed. Because what they would do is they would have an instrument. Normally, it would be an organ at a church or whatever. But whoever had the prominent instrument, everyone else tuned to that instrument.
Right. That makes sense.
So if a group of musicians went from one place to another, they all had to tune all their stuff to the dominant thing. So pitches in musical instrument, they produced change over time due to heat and mechanical wear and tear, right? So everybody's instrument would be different depending on the temperature. Yeah, having a good time. Melissa told me what I should do is have you be on video, and then Melissa, and then I should mute you. And when you're talking to somebody, I should try to figure out what you're saying and interpret it.
Good luck with that.
So, different instruments at a different temperature, with a different humidity, with different age of the strings or whatever, would sound different, right?
Yes.
So,
and that's still the case. I mean, we understand that, right?
Yeah. So
that's still the case.
In 1711, a tuning fork was invented. So that way people could use a tuning fork and they could have a constant tone. The problem with that is that tuning forks resonated at different frequencies depending on what they were made of, what kind of metal, how big they were, how small they were, different, how they were shaped, whatever. So there was no standard of tuning forks either. You would buy a tuning fork specifically to tune to your music that you're playing at the time, but somebody else's tuning fork would be completely different than yours.
Interesting.
So in the 19th century, the era of pitch inflation started. So that was where they figured out the relationship between the thickness of a string and its tension, right? Because up until the 19th century, they used the same size string, and they would just make it different depending on how tight it was or how loose it was, and that's what made the sound. But in the 19th century, they changed to being able to make thick strings and tension in them with tuning pegs and stuff. So that's when they actually started making those.
Cool.
So then around that time is when musical instruments started sounding better because they can tune it a lot more detailed. They can get actual tuning of what they were playing, so they could get an actual thing. Except for the piano. The piano always had like thick and thin strings. You know what I mean? But there were other people who were like, other instruments that didn't happen like that.
It's funny you say that because I was going to mention that earlier. Well, I don't want to break up your flow, but also I was going to mention, maybe that's why they had the piano as the mainstay, or the organ, like you were saying. That's what made me think of it.
Yeah.
Because that one seemed to be something that was always, it depended on how well it was made. It didn't necessarily depend on who made it.
Well, and it would keep its tuning a lot longer. Also, it wasn't moved around much. normally an organ was put into a church and it was left there and you didn't move it.
Right. That's a good point.
And there were a lot of times when pipe organs, instead of string organs, pipe organs were, they didn't lose their tune hardly at all because it was just air blowing through a pipe.
Right. Right.
So they didn't lose their tune at all. So orchestras started competing with each other for a better sound, and they started tuning their instruments higher and higher and higher, which led to some problems with singers because singers would perform with different orchestras, and they wouldn't be able to sing the music. Even though they're familiar with the music, they wouldn't be able to sing that music because it may be higher or lower than what they were
Right.
used to. So at the urging of the French government, they started tuning the A string at 435 hertz in 1859.
Okay.
So
wow, that's a weird year, bro. You know what else happened that year, right?
No, what happened that year?
All the telegraph machines and whatnot supposedly went out due to a solar flare.
Yeah, solar flare.
So
Yeah.
that's a little strange, don't you think?
Yeah.
It's a weird year for that to happen. Anyway.
So all of the opera houses in Europe adopted that standard, the standard of the 435 hertz. Okay. But in Britain, the French standard was interpreted as negative. So British orchestras were like, no, we're not going to do what you French people say because you people don't know what you're doing. Okay.
This is true.
So
French are very bad at music.
So the British, they tuned everything to 439 hertz. Okay. Which, fast forward, there was an international conference in 1939 held in London that resulted in the recommendation to use 440 hertz as the standard, because it was a compromise between the different, 439, 450, whatever. So they were able to do it at 440. And some people would use 439 because it was a prime number, and they're like, we want to use a prime number. So, but the standard became 440 hertz. And eventually in 1955, the standard of the A at 440 hertz was adopted internationally by the International Organization for Standardization. So all instruments and all tuning
took almost 20 years.
Yeah.
After they suggested it for them to decide to do it.
Right.
See, man, something's up, dude.
But
there's something missing from that whole story. But go ahead.
But a lot of symphonies and orchestras still ignore that. They'll tune to 441, 442, 443. They'll do 415 or 470.
Okay, so let me see if I get this straight. You're telling me from your research that 432 was never a thing, really?
Well, the 432 now is being more of a thing because people are like, 432, if you listen to it, it's tuning it to a better number. You know what I mean? To a more holy number. Apparently 440, if you tune to 440, it's sort of a sad feeling. You get a sad feeling. But if you tune up to 430, or if you tune to 432, you get a happier feeling. It's a warmer, happier feeling.
Which is why Bob Marley used it, I'll bet.
Dude, I watched this video from this one dude, and he was like, all these numerology people, and dude, he was like, these people are stupid, and he was calling them all kinds of names and stuff, and I'm like, I love this guy.
It's because they're calling people stupid. Getting away with it.
Yeah, exactly. Melissa wants to know why Joe's not on today. She's wondering if he has pink eye again.
Oh, that's messed up. His wife keeps farting on his pillow.
Yeah. Well, you remember his joke about
Kidding, Emily.
M&Ms, right?
I thought it was Skittles. Taste the rainbow.
Yeah, but you start off with M&Ms because you don't know if it's chocolate or poop.
How you folks doing?
Hi, how you
You
doing,
need anything?
folks? Yeah, you need anything?
All right.
Yeah. Well, you have a good night. Enjoy your stay.
There at night we do a little dessert for the people when they're coming back from the shows and whatnot. So
Oh.
I have to go in and make sure that they know where everything is. And
So
that,
basically, the 432 conspiracy is that, first of all, that it was Joseph Goebbels was the one that pushed that number, and which is not true.
no, not true. We found that out.
Also, that 432 is a celestial number, and it is like the frequency of the universe. Cannot be true because the concept of time, like when they had these Buddhist statues that they put out at a specific configuration,
Right.
they had no concept of minutes and seconds. So this 432 hertz didn't mean anything to them.
We say that, but we don't know if they had a concept of minutes and seconds because
it would be different.
It'd
be different. It wouldn't be the exact 60 seconds. You know what I mean? A second wouldn't be 60 parts, and a minute wouldn't be 60 parts.
My point was more of the music and itself would work in time, not necessarily under a 60-second thing, but if you're looking for a tone that sounds right, you wouldn't have to base it on 60 seconds. It would just be a different number that they were working with, Right,
but they're saying that 432 hertz is the holy number because it's 432 hertz, and they can find it in literature back from thousands of years ago.
Yeah, well, but you can't find. And I think we proved that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, you can't. This guy was like, yeah. This guy was like, if you take anything and you make up some arbitrary number and you divide it and multiply it by some arbitrary number, like he was like, the moon, they take the moon and they're like the circumference of the moon and you divide it by whatever number, and then the sun and you divide it by whatever number and it becomes 432.
And they're the same size in the sky. Yeah.
He goes, look, I can do the same thing. I can go, yeah, if I take a Coke bottle and I put it against my dick and I measure my dick in the Coke bottle, and I divide that by whatever, then that's 432.
Okay, but then that's, to me, that is someone who is scoffing for the sake of scoffing because they're not taking into account something that was established that had nothing to do with the 440 versus 432.
Right, but
the solfeggio scale is based on the pure tone, the actual tone with no distortion. And that is not reliant upon prime numbers. That is only reliant upon the 9 levels. And one of them's 357, I think, or some crazy stuff like that.
369 in there because that's my favorite number.
Maybe it's 369, but my point is
that's the universal number actually. That's what Tesla says.
Sorry, man. The solfeggio scale is what they base binaural beats on. This is what they base the biofeedback on. Those tones are actually used scientifically to help cure ailments in the human brain. So I would say to you, to say that it doesn't matter is an oversight at best. But also, people are not taking into account something that has actually been established, which is the solfeggio scale. Now, if you're telling me you don't believe that there are pure tones, then that's a different argument. However, if you're going to believe that solfeggio was correct, I can't remember the guy's freaking name.
No, I'm just focusing on the numbers.
Right.
And so my point is
the numbers are important if there is an actual pure vibration there. So if there's a point where the tuning is right, and I would say to you as a musician, that there's a point where the tuning is right and a point where it's not. And I think they established 440 because they knew it was not. That's my point.
Okay.
So they intentionally wanted the music to come out distorted. Otherwise, why would you even bother with that while you're in the full swing of a world war?
Yeah, I get it. But what I'm getting at is that the numbers the people are saying these numbers have been around for thousands of years, but they're not.
Yes.
There's no
Yes.
way. And the concept of seconds and minutes, you can't take these numbers over the course, like when people go through like the Torah, and they take out the numbers and the minutes and the days and stuff like that, and the calendar and junk like that, and they try to apply it to today. And I'm sitting back going, you do realize that their concept of calendar is completely different than our concept of a calendar.
Yep.
Even our concept of a calendar is only, a few hundred years old, maybe 1,000 years old, something like that.
And said to not be nearly as accurate as some of the calendars that were used in the past. So
yeah. So I'm like, it's just like the Mayan calendar.
Yes.
Equating the Mayan calendar with our calendar is stupid, because the Mayan calendar was thousands of years ago. It's completely
and the way
different.
they did it, it would almost, you would have to know when what day the calendar started to be able to do that. That would be the only way.
Exactly.
And even then,
well, and people are like,
bro.
Jesus wasn't born on Christmas, and I'm like, that's not the point. The point is that they were celebrating the birth of Jesus on a specific day. And then I was talking with a 7-day Adventist. The 7-day Adventist is like, well, the Sabbath is a Saturday, and they're going off on this whole thing, and I'm like, yeah, but we gave Saturday a meaning with the Gregorian calendar, but before that, Saturday didn't have a meaning, and what we think of Saturday as to now is not the same as Saturday in the Jewish calendar. Even the Jewish calendar had iterations that are multiple iterations, so you have no idea what Saturday is.
They have like a running count of the years. And then I was going to tell you, that's how I feel about the Sabbath. The Sabbath was established by the Jewish people, and it was established for God. So if you change that from Saturday to Sunday, then you're going against the commandments, because it says to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. So once it's established, it cannot be moved.
Yeah, but my whole thing on that is, whether it's Saturday or Sunday, either one or both wrong, because the calendar that they were using when it was first established, the Sabbath was first established, is completely different than what we have today. They even had some calendars, Jewish calendars back in the day, that only had 6 days or 9 days or whatever. So which of those calendars are they using?
Right, but then I would say to you, then, isn't that really the point, that the enemy has obfuscated things so badly that you can't even discern when the Sabbath is to observe it properly?
Well,
and I would also say that if it wasn't important what day you celebrated it on, why would it say to establish that day and then keep it holy?
Well, here's my opinion on that and my thought process based on biblical studies. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Ebenezer stones were stones that Jewish people would put at places for remembrance. They were called stones of remembrance, Ebenezer stones. So
that's why they called Scrooge Ebenezer Scrooge.
So you put these stones of remembrance somewhere in order to remember what's going on there.
Okay.
But if somebody else called that stone of remembrance something else, it still has value. It still has, it's still important, right? Even if if I saw that Ebenezer stone sitting there and I decided to call it the stone of Bethlehem, right? It would still have a meaning, right? Regardless of what day of the week it's on, if it has meaning to you, you know what I'm saying? Observing the Sabbath is a
specific, bro.
Well, I know, but observing the Sabbath is a you acknowledging God by establishing a day of rest in your life, like the Jews were establishing a day of rest in their life, right? But
yes.
So it's the same thing when we establish a day of rest in our life. That's how we observe the Sabbath, and it doesn't matter what day of the week is on. Because we don't know what day of the week the Sabbath actually was on back in the day. So all we can do is pick a day and go, this is the day that I'm going to observe the Sabbath.
Okay, well, I hear what you were saying, but I don't I have yet to see any evidence in the Bible that alludes to any day you want to celebrate is fine. Simply because, like I said, in the Bible, it clearly says to establish the Sabbath.
Right. But what I'm saying is,
then keep it holy. In other words,
what day is the Sabbath?
Establish the day.
Yeah, what day is
then
that?
Keep it holy. Well, once again, my thoughts are you have to go by God's people who established the Sabbath. Now, I understand and believe what you're saying about the distortion of the calendar and not being able to keep it right. But I also want to say that the Jewish people have been keeping time a lot longer than the calendars that we use. So it seems to me that if this Jewish Sabbath was established, they are keeping it holy.
Yeah, but I'm saying that the Jewish people are calling the Sabbath Saturday.
Right, Friday night into Saturday, because that's the seventh day of the week for them.
Right. And what I'm saying is it's based on the Gregorian calendar. But prior to that, calendars that the Jewish people used may have had 9 days or 6 days, depending on what tribe was keeping the calendar at the time. So you don't know if Saturday is the actual day, and you don't know if they're skipping days. So you'll be observing the Sabbath maybe correctly out of a year. You might be observing the Sabbath maybe 30 times out of the year correctly, out of the 56.
If that's the case, then how do they celebrate Yom Kippur and what's the other one?
The Feast of the Tabernacles. They have all these different feasts.
So those ones that are established, if that's the case, then that would mean that all of their celebrations are either all of them are distorted, or because they are God's people, if you believe that.
Yeah.
And then once they've established that, then that is the law of man.
What they're doing is they're saying, we want you. The Bible says to observe these feasts at these times. So what they're doing is they're observing those feasts at the time that is current, the current time. So that's how they observe it, is using the current calendar, the current time.
Right. So really our
they're still observing it, so they're
more on semantics of whether or not you need to follow what the Jewish people have established, because that's probably not the same.
Right. Well,
or whether or not it is your right to go ahead and say, you know what? Monday's my Sabbath. I'm just going to take that day off. I ain't going to use nothing, be nothing, do nothing.
Well, actually, I know pastors within the church, Monday is their Sabbath because they work on Sunday at the church. That's their job, is to preach on Sunday. So Monday is their day off. That's their Sabbath day, is the Monday.
Right.
So the point I'm making is that it's more of a in your heart, you're separating this time frame. You know what I mean? So it becomes in your heart. And when you get into spiritual things, it's really whatever, whatever you think is correct based on your belief system.
I missed that verse in the Bible. Where is that? Let me look that up.
What?
Where it's like, just do whatever you want. It's cool.
No, it's like hide my words in your heart. Where there's scripture that says, take these words and hide them in your heart, or engrave them on your heart, right? What language? What language do we engrave those in our heart? If we speak English and we engrave the words of God in our heart in English, in the language that we actually speak, is that sin? Is that wrong because we're not doing it in the original language from the time it was?
Right. Like everybody ends the prayer with amen. And I'm like, why would you do that? Well, it means so be it. No, it means truly and verily.
Dude, we did a Bible study on Selah. You ever heard of Selah?
Yeah, Selah was the original in the Psalms. But then my other question is, okay, so why would you do an entire prayer in English, not to mention the name Jesus, which is a Latinized version of his actual name, which was Isu?
Yeah.
Why would you do your whole prayer in English, and then when you get to the end, use some obscure Hebrew word that doesn't even mean what you're using it for?
Yeah, just like there are some people that use Yahweh. They refer to God as Yahweh.
Yeah, and that's the Tetragrammaton, really, is what we're talking about, which is 4 letters.
That goes back to my point. When we observe the Sabbath, we observe the Sabbath within the constraints of the time frame we're in, and as long as we're doing it with the right heart, we're doing it correctly. And when the Bible talks about take my words and engrave them in your heart, if we do it within the language that we know, then it's still valid. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, gotcha. Some people take that and then they try to tattoo something on their heart. So actually, that might be misguided.
Actually, tattoo things on your heart. Melissa got a new tattoo, by the way.
Did she?
Yeah, the Grim Reaper with the hourglass running out.
Interesting.
Because everybody's running out of time. You know what I'm saying? Speaking of running out of time, look at that. You know, Joe's not going to be on the show tonight. Did you know that?
I guess not.
So Joe's not going to be on the show tonight. That means that if you want to be on the show for a little bit longer, you can. Or if you got to go, you got to go.
Yes, I will have to get back to work.
Yeah. Well, you get back.
As much as I would love to talk to you.
Yeah. Well, that was James R. Freeman, my buddy, my friend, hanging out with me. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. Not only are we friends, man, but there's something about the way we interact. We both gathered knowledge, but when we get to the end, we don't have the same outlook. And I enjoy that because that kind of proves a theory I've had most of my life, which is that you can give two people the exact same experiences over a lifetime. And when you get to the end, they will not be the same person.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that. And then I think for you and I, it started off with that first discussion we had where you were talking about homosexuality and transgenderism and how that was going to be like a staple.
How it was going to be like it is today. Like,
yeah.
I'm a, what do you call that? I'm a prophet, man.
A prognosticator.
I'm a prophet. I knew what was happening.
But the thing that was the funniest to me was I had that conversation with the biggest drag queen in Key West, who was some kind of professional that had actually retired and was living in Key West. And that thing sat down with me and told me the whole plan. And I had no idea that I was talking to someone who knew
what was
plan,
up. Yeah.
Let alone believing that there was one. But every day that goes by now, I think about that conversation at least once or twice. And I think, that thing was telling me the plan. And it was so weird. That thing got so mad at me that I think that's why I did it. Because we were having a little argument and I was telling him that homosexuality is not a base instinct in human beings.
You're going to get us banned.
You know what I mean, right? Yeah. So, right, well, it's my own thoughts.
I know, but YouTube
can't prove it either way.
I'm saying though, but YouTube is like, you can't have your own thoughts because if you say something that doesn't fit the narrative that we want you to have, we're going to ban you. And I'm sitting back going, whatever, man. Did you see the new Steven Crowder?
No.
He infiltrates a fat studies conference, and then at the end of the thing, they list him as a reliable source. You got to go watch it, dude. It's hilarious.
I wish I could get to his channel a little more often. I sent you something today. Did you look at it?
I did.
What did you think?
Yeah, jellyfish, hydra, whatever.
Did you watch the next one after that?
No, but my whole thought process is there's a lot of people that have some parasites in them all the time.
Well, he caught that lady doing something.
I'm saying
she sent that, right? And I'm like, oh, that's weird.
If she's ever if she's ever ate caviar, that would make sense. You know what I'm saying?
And that was the fun part. See, that's why I like Casey's channel, because Casey went and did research based on what they gave him. And the whole time he was saying, I cannot vouch for what she's given me, but this is what the research shows. Well, when you watch the next video, he caught something. Actually, I think it was one of the viewers caught something that she had done. And I guess they did some of that stuff for a living, worked in a laboratory, right? And there was something that she had done, like superimpose something on it, and they caught that. So then the next video, so if you go on to Enter the Stars and watch the next video, he talks about it. And that's one of the reasons I like that show, because he will say, look, this is what the research shows. This is what I'm finding. But I am merely passing on the information. I'm merely explaining to you what I see. But he never vouches for stuff like that. And I like that, man.
Well, it's almost like
that's one of his longtime viewers / listeners trying to dupe him.
Well, it's almost like this conjecture fact thing that we do.
Right.
Sometimes we don't pick a side, and sometimes we do pick a side where okay, you play the bad cop, I'll play the good cop, whatever. You know what I mean? And we get to pick a side, and we get to argue whatever the case is. You know what I'm saying?
Right, devil's advocate.
Devil's advocate, or most of the time it's this is what this website says about this theory, and here's another website that contradicts it. So you make up your mind which one you want to believe. Whatever. All right, that was good, man. That was good. I'm gonna have to get you off the phone because I got to get to the next stuff, man.
Appreciate you, man. I miss you. And
man. You know what?
I may be up there on the weekends over the summer, so I'll have to come see you.
Everybody wants you to be on the show live with me again.
Really?
Yeah, everyone.
Well, everyone who thinks that, thank you very much. It makes me feel very special.
All 15 of our subscribers.
Dude, that's 15 more people didn't like me last week, so.
I'm just saying, it's our interaction, the interaction between us.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, man, if I can make it up that way on a Monday, I will definitely try to do that. But yeah, it's hard to do with my job.
Yeah. Well, in April, there may be a couple episodes we're gonna have to skip because I got my birthday and anniversary and stuff coming up. Know what I mean?
Well, I just had a friend of mine fix my laptop, so I'll be able to start using that when we do these.
Oh, to do the video part?
Yeah.
Well, I wish I could figure it out. I wish I could figure that part out.
Well, my end will be good, and then you just got to catch up.
I've been using phone systems for like forever, so I know how to use a phone. But the video shit, I can't get it. I don't get it. Whatever, man. All right, man. I'm gonna kick you off.
All right, bro.
All right, I'm back.
Late.
All right, that was James R. Freeman. Yeah, that was James R. Freeman. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, so we're gonna do the Outpost Survival Tip of the Week. The Outpost Survival Tip of the Week. Today we're gonna do 10 things to avoid. 10 things to avoid. It's 10 things to avoid doing, or could be 10 things to avoid having. Okay? So here we go. Number 10. Avoid believing the temperature on a sleeping bag. The sleeping bag will have a temperature rating on it. The temperature rating sometimes is wrong. Sometimes it's the temperature listed on there is the extreme survival temperature, not the comfort temperature. So when you're using a sleeping bag, make sure that you understand the temperature reading on it. Go to their website, try to figure it out. But I would never believe the temperature listed on a sleeping bag. Number 9, pre-packed survival kits. Okay. Pre-packed survival kits. Try to avoid pre-packed survival kits. And the reason that is because the items in a pre-packed survival kit most of the time are crappy. They're cheaply made. They don't work well. Also, they're equipment that you're not really familiar with. You know what I mean? So you may get something in a pre-packed survival kit that you have no idea how to use it. Okay. Number 8, avoid fake ferro rods, ferricium rods. Avoid fake ferricium rods. A ferricium rod is like something about that. Like they have little ones like this, and they have larger ones that are bigger around than this. And you strike them with a steel, and they make sparks. Fake ferricium rods, they have a little tiny strip of ferricium on the side, and the rest of it is cheap magnesium that doesn't work very well. And you're supposed to scrape the magnesium off and then strike it with the ferro. I mean, yeah, scrape the magnesium off and then strike it with steel to make the ferricium spark. The problem with those is that the magnesium doesn't work very well. The ferro part, the ferricium part of it, it doesn't last very long, and it breaks easily. It's not very good. So avoid fake ferricium rods. Try to get a good one. If you're going to order one online, make sure they have a return policy that you can return it and get your money back or whatever. Because if you get it and it turns out not to be an actual ferricium rod, you need to send that crap back. Number 7, avoid leaving your filter for your water in the cold or in the heat. Okay? No, I messed it up. Number 7 is avoid leaving food and water in the cold or heat. So in your survival kit or in your backpack or whatever, you'll have water and food in there. Well, if you leave it in your car and there's, let's say, a heat wave, well, that food and water is going to get hot and the water is going to taste weird. It might even spoil. The food will get hot and it's possible that the food will spoil. If it gets cold, the water will freeze and the container could break. The food could freeze and then no longer be good. So avoid keeping food and water anywhere where there's going to be hot or cold, in your bug out bag. Even when you're out, let's say you're out camping and you have food and water, keep your food and water near your body, in your sleeping bag if you can, because at night your water will freeze, your food will freeze if it's cold, and you can keep it warm that way, or keep it near you because if you're keeping yourself cool, you're keeping your food and water cool at the same time. So, yeah. Let's see. Number 6, avoid double wall containers. A double wall container basically is a metal container like a thermos. A lot of times a thermos, those what are the Yeti thermoses and things of that nature, the Stanley thermoses. Those are good if you're just going to be putting something in it. And storing it for, a few hours or a few days. Never use one of those to boil water in. What happens is a double layer, it has a layer on the inside that holds your beverage, and then the layer on the outside, which is an outside, it's outside the container. It basically keeps it from puncturing or getting messed up on the outside. Keeps it thermal, basically keeps it hot or cold, right? But inside those two, there's a little gap, and in that little gap, it's a vacuum seal gap, and sometimes they put different gases in there to have that vacuum in there. Sometimes they have no gases or anything, or it's just a vacuum. When you put it on a fire, those things can pop. Generally, they don't explode. They just pop a seam. If you end up having to use one of those, if you're going to end up having one of those, what you do is you pop a hole in it, and then you can put it in the fire if you have some way to relieve the vacuum, so that when it heats up, it doesn't build up pressure inside of it. Mrs. Onyx asked about the survival buckets aren't temperature controlled. I'm talking about extreme temperature. extreme freezing temperatures and extreme hot temperatures. Those buckets are inside the house in a room that's not heated, but it's still inside the house. So it's more protected than if it was outside in the elements. Good question there. Good question. All right. Number 5, avoid cheap multi-tools. See if I could find it. I don't have one. I was going to say, I've gotten cheap multi-tools from various places. Here's one. Here's a cheap multi-tool. This is a cheap multi-tool. It used to have a wrench on the end here, and it has like different screwdrivers and stuff like that. Avoid these, or multi-tools that have pliers on them that are really cheap. The scissors don't cut very well. The blades don't stay sharp, and they're not very sharp. The it's put together real flimsily. The things on it break. Like this had a wrench on it, it breaks. The pliers on a lot of those things, they don't do what they're supposed to do properly. You can't open and close them because the handles are all wonky and stuff like that. If you're going to get a multi-tool, get a really good quality multi-tool. Avoid cheap multi-tools. Okay, number 4, avoid cord saws. Most cord saws are worthless in a survival situation. A cord saw basically is a string of metal, like a metal cord, with rings or loops at the end where you can then put it over a piece of wood, and you go like this, and it cuts the wood, cuts a branch or whatever. A regular folding saw does a better job with that, or even a pocket chainsaw. Pocket chainsaw takes up about the same amount of room as a cord saw. Most cord saws don't work. The little rings on the end pop off. The loops on the end pop off. The cord itself is made of flimsy material, so it doesn't actually cut well. Even the really, really, really well-made ones don't really work all that well. So I would avoid a cord saw because other things work a lot better than a cord saw. Okay? So, number 3, don't leave your water filter in the cold or heat. If you have like a life straw or some kind of a water filter that you put on a bottle and then you can drink, like let's say you take dirty water, put it in the bottle, you screw your water filter on it, and then you drink, and the when you're drinking, the water filter filters the water, so that way you're having water that doesn't have pathogens in it, and it's healthier for you. It's safer for you when you're in a survival situation, or if you're using a life straw or whatever. Don't let those things get cold. Where you're in like let's say a cold situation where you know it's going to freeze overnight, keep your life straw or your filter in your sleeping bag with you, down by your feet, or in your sleeping bag somewhere with you, so they don't freeze. What'll happen is the filter itself, if it has any water in it, will freeze and break the filter and make it not work anymore. Also, even if it doesn't have water in it, the cold temperatures can compromise the filter itself. It freezes the filter and makes it brittle, and then it makes it so it doesn't work anymore. So avoid those. Okay, number 2, hollow-handled knives. Hollow-handled knives are all the rage. They call them Rambo knives, whatever. They're the survival knives that they look cool, and they have like serrated thing around the back, and it's a big blade, and the handle itself, if you open up the handle, inside the handle there's like fishing stuff, and there's matches, and the end of the handle will have like a compass on it sometimes, or a mirror or whatever. Those things are so cheap. Even the really good ones I wouldn't use, because the handle is riveted, bolted, or welded on to the blade. That is a point of weakness. So you wouldn't be able to baton stuff with it very well. So the blade will break easily. Most of the time, the stuff in the handle is stuff that you could just get on your own and put it into like a little tin on your own, like a survival tin. You could take a Mentos tin or a Sucret's tin, just a little tin, and you put your stuff in there, and then you can carry that in your pocket, and you have more stuff in it than one of those survival knives. And you can have a full tang. A full tang knife is, if this is the knife and this is the tip of the blade and this is the end of the handle, the metal goes through from the tip of the blade all the way to the end of the handle, and has like something as a handle connected to it or taped to it or whatever. So that, get a full tang knife. Don't get one of those stupid hollow handle knives. And the last one, 10 things to avoid. Number 1, avoid taking for granted you know how to use that thing, that gear, that device, whatever that thing is. If you have a bug out bag, if you have a camping kit, emergency preparedness kit, if you've got a pre-packed survival kit, if you've got a survival tin, whatever it is, don't take for granted that you know how to use whatever is in your thing. Actually use it. Learn how to use it. Because if you're out in a survival situation, you don't have the time and you don't have the luxury of taking the time to learn how to use something. Know that you know how to use it. Actually take it out and use it. If you've never used a ferro rod, what's the point of having the ferro rod if you don't know how to use it properly? What's the point of having a knife if you don't know how to use it properly? What's the point of having a paracord if you don't know how to use it properly? Whatever it is, avoid taking for granted that you know how to use it. Just because you've seen somebody else do it doesn't mean that you're automatically going to know how to do it. So that is the Outpost Survival Tip of the Week. Outpost Survival Tip of the Week. 10 things to avoid. Yeah. So, yeah. Now we're going to get into, this is going to be great. Now we're going to get into back in the day. Is it? Back in the day. This one is going to be really detailed, and you guys are going to hate it. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and pull up a website to describe what I'm talking about. Here we go. Let's do this. Boom. Back in the day, we had, before the internet, this is way before the internet, okay? How did people communicate with each other before the internet? Over phone lines. So back in the day, when I was really little, this thing was invented. I'm old enough. I'm older than the internet. So the internet as we know it. Back in the day, BBS, bulletin board systems, were invented. They were invented during a blizzard in Chicago in 1978. Okay? In 1978, you had this dude right here, this guy, Ward Cheisel. So during the blizzard of 1978, they called it the Great Blizzard, Ward Christensen and Randy Seuss, they were hobbyists in a local computer hobbyist exchange. It was the Chicago area computer hobbyist exchange. It was basically a computer club, and they were friends in this computer club. And when the blizzard hit, one of the dudes was like, "Hey, why don't we try to figure out how to communicate with each other through phone lines?" So he created a protocol for communicating between one computer and another computer, and he came up with a modem, or he started using modems. A modem is a modulator demodulator. That's what modem stands for. Modulator demodulator. And he made this program that allowed two computers to communicate with each other over a phone line. And then it was, put into actual, they made modems later on that people would actually be able to use. So this guy, Ward Christensen, and his buddy, they were describing what they were talking about, what they wanted to do. Okay, so the one guy goes, wouldn't it be great if we could connect one computer to another computer, and we could connect them in a way where we could leave messages, like when we were in the lunchroom, we could leave notes for each other, like at the bulletin board in the lunchroom or at the school. They have a bulletin board that you could put a note saying, hey, I need a ride, whatever, I need a roommate, whatever. You could leave a note on this bulletin board. So he was like, you know what, let's make a computerized bulletin board. So they called it a CBBS, computer bulletin board system. Okay. But CBBSs, what we know as bulletin board systems, we knew they were computer bulletin board system, BBSs. So I know them as BBSs. I've been using BBSs for an extended period of time. So BBSs. So a BBS is basically a bulletin board system that the computer runs server software. Computer dials up to that other computer. Like if I wanted to connect to a computer, I would have the phone number of that other computer. I would dial it in, put it into my modem software. My modem would dial to the other computer. The other computer would answer, and then they would communicate with each other using software. They would synchronize and they would start talking to each other, and then messages would come up on my computer, and messages would come up on the other person's computer. These were basically the original social networks. Bulletin boards or BBSs were for all types of things. There are a whole bunch of different reasons why people use BBSs. And here are some what BBSs would have. Okay. So a classic BBS would be a computer, one or more modems, one or more phone lines. Okay. They would have BBS software on them. They would have a sysop or system operator, and then they would have a user community. It was the first social network, the user community, a community of people who logged on to the thing. Okay. So what do they do? What was the point? Okay. The point of connecting to a bulletin board system was they had a visual menu system or textual menu system. Okay. They had a way to send messages between one person and another person, and that eventually became what they call email, because I would send an electronic mail message through a bulletin board to somebody else, and they would send a reply back to me. So we would be able to communicate with each other by sending messages back and forth to each other. We could upload and download these messages, and they would use either like X modem, Y modem, Z modem. I used Z modem as my stuff. You know, they would have a files area a lot of times where you could download computer games. You could download, different software. You could download pictures. You could download just different files. There was a file sharing thing. A lot of times it was you downloading the files. Every once in a while you would upload something, but most of the time it was downloading something. You could have a live view of all the activity of all the other people who called in. Now, what it would do is it would display how many users were online or on that computer at the time, or how many people called that day, or how many people were using it at any given time that day, whatever. The system operators could see everything that everybody was doing. Then they would have a way to vote, polls, or a way for people to vote on things. They would have like, hey, what do you think of this? Would you rather do this or do that? And then you would vote on that. Would you rather get this game or this game? Would you rather have this software or this software? And you would vote on it. So there was statistics on people who posted messages. They would have the top uploaders, the top downloaders, who upload, or the top downloaded and uploaded software. They had online games. They were normally single player for individuals to play games. Now, those games were so fun and so interesting. Most of them were text-based games. I remember text adventure games, a lot of text adventure games. I was first introduced to them through a bulletin board system. I used to make some of those games, and I used to distribute games through bulletin board systems also. There was a doorway for third-party games. So let's say somebody else made a game, a BBS would then have a way that you can play that game through their BBS, but it would be somebody else's game. Having auditing capabilities, whatever. Multi-user chat. So multi-user chat. Okay, so there was MRC, multi-user relay chat, and then there was IRC, internet relay chat. Well, BBSs were the first way that you can chat with people by sending people messages, and it was as instant as you can get going over a phone line. Okay, there was internet mail, email, whatever, and it was normally based on just that BBS. But sometimes what the bulletin boards would do is they would connect to a centralized bulletin board and then download email from other places, so you can download. You could communicate with people on other message boards if you wanted to. There was networking between BBSs or message boards, so you could leave messages for people or whatever. There was so you could, if you were, let's say you were in trouble or whatever and you wanted some help, sometimes you could actually try to you can communicate with the system operator directly, and if the system operator were available, then they'd be able to talk with you and chat with you. So that's basically the way BBSs worked back in the day. Is you'd be able to communicate. Okay, so you had the precursor to the public bulletin board system was the community memory thing at Berkeley, California, started in 1973, and that was just in-house there. There were similar things to BBSs within schools and within military establishments, but they were just for those specific places. The BBSs that people were making, or that this guy created, they took off. Like, people started using bulletin board systems after that all over the place, just copying the software. It was shareware or open source, so people could just download the software and modify it however they wanted to. This is a picture of a modem. The modem basically would allow your computer to communicate with the phone line, and the phone line to communicate with the computer. And then higher speeds came about later on. And around 1994 is when the actual internet that we know of right now came about, around 1984 or 1994. So not until 1994 did the internet actually come about. And bulletin board systems around 1995 became a little bit obsolete. There are some bulletin board systems, BBSs, that have survived the entire time and have always been up and running. So, that's a computer right there, like the one I used to use. My first BBS experience was on a Commodore 64, and then on a TRS-80, and then when I used bulletin board systems a little bit more, I started using them on a Mac Plus. I would use a Mac Plus. So we would use, the Macintosh to get on the bulletin board systems. So BBSs have been around for a long, long time. By the way, you ever had a zip file? Zip files were invented because of BBSs. That's where zip files came from, was BBSs. So let me zoom in here. I'm going to zoom into this thing here. Okay. So what if you wanted to connect to a BBS today? Well, there's this website, Telnet BBS Guide, telnetbbsguide.com, and they have a list of BBSs, and you can sort through them. You can get a detailed description of them. You can get a brief description of them. And let's say like Mad World, it tells you their address, what kind of software they're using for their BBS, what kind of connection they use, and then, description of what they've got going on. If you want more information about that specific BBS, you click the more info thing and it'll try to give you more. This one is actually in Kansas City. What? Mad World BBS is in Kansas City. Oh man, if I would have known that, I would have called that guy and he could have been on the show with me right now. I'm totally going to connect to that one when I get home. Boom. Mad World BBS. Boom. So there are different BBSs that do different things. A lot of them have games that you can connect to. See, there's some worldwide you can connect to them. If you have Telnet, they tell you can connect through that. SSH is a little bit more secure. You can connect through SSH, and then you can connect with a modem. A lot of these things, you could still use a modem by dialing a phone number. And that's the software, and you can connect through dial-up, SSH, or Telnet. This website's pretty cool because you can say, okay, I want to connect only through a modem, or I want to connect only through Telnet, or I want to connect only from SSH. Or if you want a specific software, you can actually, well, they're not doing it now, but you could even look for specific software in there, and you could even go by name. So let's say, well, what other BBSs are there besides Mad World and all this? And then you've got all the ones that start with an M. These are all ones that start with an M. So if you wanted to look for one that starts with M is Married with Comedy, or J. So J, Jeff Onyx, just J, whatever, J's Cafe. You got all these different BBSs you connect to. So if you've never used a BBS, I would encourage you to use a BBS. BBSs are really fun. Old school. Connecting to a BBS is not hard. I was able to connect to a BBS using my PC. They've got software out there for the PC and the Mac. In the link, or there's a link in the description below for that website, but also where you can get software to connect to a BBS with Mac or PC. I also downloaded Juice SSH or whatever. Juice is a Android tablet version of the terminal thing. So I have a large tablet. I was able to connect to a BBS, a bulletin board system, on a tablet, and then like a keyboard on the tablet or whatever, so I can do the things I needed to do. So that was really, really fun. Yeah. Back in the day was BBSs. So, yeah. I hope you liked that one, because that was one of my favoriteest ones. All right, so now we're going to take off back in the day. Pathetic pet of the week. I hear cars and stuff outside. You hear that? That's a really loud vehicle. All right, so today's pathetic pet of the week is, boom, this guy right here. That guy right there. Today's pathetic pet of the week is Howie. This is Howie. Nice to meet you, Howie. And this is Howie in a little house, little like dollhouse. This is Howie playing in some sheets. This is Howie sitting at a table looking around. This is Howie hanging out in the sink. Very photogenic. Howie, what a pretty kitty. Howie is a tabby in Mission, Kansas, a young male, medium-sized, tabby gray, blue, silver. He's friendly, affectionate, playful, smart, curious, couch potato, funny and gentle, good in a home with children. His short hair, all his stuff is up to date. So meet Howie, gorgeous social kitty seeking a new home. Howie is a lovely 1-year-old boy who loves people. Loves people. Tiny kiddos can stress him out a little bit, but he'd love a home with other kids, older kids or adults. to spend time with. Howie loves to play and lounge around and generally be where you are because he loves being around people. He's a sweet boy and he's neutered and he's up to date on all the shots, but he requires some special food because of a urinary issue he was diagnosed with, probably a urinary tract infection. The food isn't hard to find, and look at that pretty boy. Totally worth the extra money for the special food that he has to eat. We have a dog that has a special diet, so I'm pretty sure animals with special diet, not the big deal. If you're interested in making Howie part of your family, reach out. Call 913-671-7387. He's at The Pet Connection Incorporated. The Pet Connection Incorporated in Mission, Kansas. So the pathetic pet of the week is Howie. Check out Howie. Oh my gosh. Howie's such a good kitty. Look at that. Look at Howie. Oh my goodness. Oh my god. Look at that, Howie. Oh my goodness. Oh my god. Oh my goodness. In there. So that's the pathetic pet of the week is Howie. Howie's the pathetic pet of the week. Yeah. All right. Well, here we go. The last little bit is Trivia Snap. So, the trivia question was, American pioneer John Chapman was famous for planting which kind of tree? The answer is the apple tree. John Chapman was Johnny Appleseed. John Chapman is commonly known as Johnny Appleseed. That's pretty much it. If you want to send us fan mail, care of Comedy Vets, P.O. Box 369, Lathrop, Missouri 64465. If you'd like to send us hate mail, if you're an angry feminist, send us hate mail, care of Comedy Vets, P.O. Box 369, Lathrop, Missouri 64465. And yeah, that's pretty much it, right? That's pretty much it. Episode 8 is over. You've been listening to Married with Comedy with Jeff Onyx. Special guest on the phone was James R. Freeman. Joe wasn't around this time. That's sad.